This is our management team group project. And for our topic, we choose the pandemic's effect on the supply chain. My name is Ryan Larson. I'm a sophomore and I'm an accounting major.
My name is Garrett Hurt. I'm a junior and I'm a management major.
My name is Jack Massey. I'm a junior and I'm a finance major.
I'm Ignacio Gomez. I'm a sophomore and I'm an economics major. So we want to start off with talking about what supply chain is. So supply chain is the sequence of processes involved in the production and distribution of a commodity. So all the steps that involve the creation of the product all the way down to when the suppliers and the customers get it, as you can see on the image on the left. And then going alongside with that, you also have operations management, which is the management of a process used to design, supply, produce, and deliver the valuable goods and services to the customers. So operations management kind of works its way around into seeing how to make supply chain more efficient, which we're going to be talking about here in the next slide. So how operations management benefits the supply chain. So first of all, it improves the efficiency of production in every process by using critical thinking and management. And that is just pretty self-explanatory. Operations management is going to find areas that is lacking and try to improve them. That way they can improve their times and be more efficient. They also use graphs and math to improve the performance of employees and machines. And alongside with that, they create data from processes to compare with the markets and the competitors. Once again, just so they can produce faster and get better outlets on that. They also help corporations minimize expenses and maximize productions by being efficient. So how has the pandemic affected the supply chain? Obviously, with COVID coming around at the beginning of 2020, our lives were shook by the virus, and it caused everything to again just stop. And that caused factories and offices to close down for months, and then which resulted down in slowing down productions all around the world. The supply chains fluctuated over the past 2 years since then, partly due to the excessive demand that was caused by the halt over the first couple months of 2020. And that has gone from all kinds of industries, from the medical sector all down to the industrial area, as well as technology. And due to the several key issues in the supply chain, it has taken a hit in many markets, and people are beginning to notice of this. In 2021, there were 2.2 million mentions of supply chain on Twitter. So COVID just kind of brought on supply chains to the everyday people, and they start to notice how supply chain actually does affect their lives every day, since a lot of people just are used to receiving their products right on time.
So some key issues that have been affected in the supply chain from the pandemic. One glaring example was in March of 2021 when there was the Suez Canal obstruction. The Suez Canal is a major trade route in Africa, which helps Asian shipping companies avoid going around Africa, and instead they can cut through and go right into the Mediterranean Sea. This trade route is very prominent for European countries and for the US. The Ever Given was the name of the container ship that got stuck, and it was 1,300 feet long. The ships blocked the canal for almost a week, and the obstruction was broadcasted globally on news networks and social media, and it was even found a lot in memes and other things on social media. But a lot of people, this really made them mad because it really slowed down the supply chain and stopped a lot of business. As you can see in the picture on the bottom right, there's thousands of ships stuck in the Red Sea waiting to go through the canal. Another key issue in the supply chain was the global microchip drought. Throughout the last 2 years, microchips have been very hard to find, and they are very crucial to the production of many new vehicles, electronic products, and computers. The limited availability has caused corporations and to close factories producing these products, which in turn has inflated the car market in the United States because they cannot produce any new cars. So old cars are beginning to go up in price because there's a limited availability. Very few of the chips are produced in the US, and that is a problem for us because it's very hard for us to import these chips and get enough because everyone needs them. This problem would be solved if we could get the legislation to pass in order to build more microchip factories in the US.
Yeah, so some key concepts that really tie to this topic of the supply chain. Obviously, the supply chain is a huge part of operations management. And during the pandemic of 2020, it really affected the supply chain. The supply chain was kind of this well-oiled machine that pumped money into the US economy. And when that was disrupted and we decided to close down for a couple weeks, that really messed with the amount of inventory. Like nobody was going to the factories to work or anything like that. So a couple of key concepts that it ties to is average inventory and demand rate. And in this article that the White House put out, it says the figure that they had showed in 2020, right before the pandemic, on average, like a retailer would have 43 days of inventory in their stock, and now they only have 33 days. And that just goes to show they're trying to play catch up. They can't really meet the demand fully. And that's due to the supply chain being disrupted and the average inventory being thrown way off. And there's just more or less a lag in the system. And then we all know about the toilet paper incident of 2020. That was a big deal. Ryan talked about the memes for the canal. This was also something that was talked a lot on social media, and people run into the store to get toilet paper and stuff like that. It just absolutely skyrocketed because it was announced that we were going to shut down for a couple weeks, and food and water were hot commodities, but it seemed to be the biggest one was toilet paper. And some key concepts that tie into this is capacity and idle time. Manufacturers really had to work at 100% capacity and restart idle machinery and cut back on the time for machines to be on downtime or cool off time, because they're just really struggling to meet that demand. And on this graph here, you can see right at the beginning when we announced we were going to shut down, the demand absolutely skyrocketed to almost 220% more in dollar sales, which is insane. And then you can see it goes down a little bit in the following weeks, still remains steadily high, and then eventually goes back down to normal in about 15 weeks after that happened.
There's another two concepts that tie in the class. We're going to talk about microchips, and you can see on the right, there's a microchip right there. In the heart of the pandemic, many different industries didn't see the level of production that they once saw due to a key missing ingredient: microchips needed for cars, smartphones, computers, and electronics. A topic learned in class is stockout probability. They weren't meeting the demand that was needed for these different computers, smartphones, or cars due to the loss of microchips. A quote here we can see is the survey revealed that manufacturers who build everything from cars and metal equipment held a 5-day inventory of microchips this month. The same survey in 2019 found an average of inventory of 40 days. Another key concept that we can see is capacity constraint. People worldwide bought more personal electronics than ever, needing extra connectivity to work and attend school remotely. We bought new computers, phones, and other chip-heavy devices. Due to the constraints of COVID-19 brought on, these demands weren't being met. And here we can see from this graph the switch from the classroom. Online learning here in every income category, using online resources went up, and this caused a constraint with the computer market.
All right, so the insights that we have gained from operations management that help us apply them to the supply chain. Some of them, the insights can be used to improve efficiency of processes and limit the unnecessary expenses that take up majority of the profit. And utilization is one of the most fundamental insights, because it can be used to evaluate about every part of the process of production.
Another two insights we learned from class was diversification and domestication. These both can tie into the pandemic shutoff, impacting the supply chain of everything. Diversification goes in with the process involves selecting two backup suppliers of various size and different locations with different capabilities. For example, Apple or Ford, they both needed microchips to meet that demand, which, like they referred earlier, the demand of used cars. And if we're going to talk about computers, the microchips needed from Taiwan weren't able to get there because of Taiwan shutting off the border. Having a domesticated supplier can avoid this situation.
Then the last insights, labor utilization, as I talked about before, but this one is specific to labor, the utilization of all resources at each step in the process. And the idle time is the paid time an employee or machine is unproductive due to factors that cannot be controlled. We saw a crazy amount of idle time over the pandemic because of lack of employees and just lack of demand, I guess, for certain items. The pandemic affected utilization in a negative way during the months factories and businesses were closed because machines, although they are like inanimate objects, they still require some expenses to keep them running. And the facilities also require like water and energy and air conditioning and things. These are all very expensive, especially when you are not producing any products to contribute to your profit. There was months of idle time for corporations when they sat empty. The employees working in restaurants and service businesses had idle time as well because of the lack of customers that weren't coming in the door. Because of the pandemic, people were pretty scared to go outside, and everyone pretty much stayed home for at least that first few months. The months everything was closed greatly affected the supply chain because of the large expense and the very little revenue gained. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for coming out.
Sweet. So I think that's